Controversy and fountain pens so rarely go together, but we find ourselves in the midst of a scandal of sorts. And I thought I would give some of my thoughts because I feel like there are some areas of this that haven't been spoken about yet. So let's start with a quick overview in case you haven't heard what's going on. So dark lilac is a color that was released by Lamy in 2016 as a special edition. And it's a pretty beautiful purple, reddish purple with a golden sheen. Brian Goulet is quoted as saying that it crashed his website when it came out. It was that popular. I personally am not a big fan of purple inks, but my personal opinions aside, it certainly looks like an interesting ink, and it was obviously very, very popular. Lamy had it out for a limited time. All the bottles were sold. Demand continued to the point where bottles are being listed on eBay for hundreds of dollars. I don't know how many they're selling at that, but they're certainly being listed. So the popularity seems to still be there. So fast forward to today, 2024, Lamy puts out their special edition safaris. You have the inks that go along with them, which seem like an homage to the dark lilac with the blackberry ink. But that was not the case. So what ended up happening was a retailer in Europe released a dark lilac ink, and for whatever reason it appears that then Lamy quickly put together this new dark lilac. And I say new because the version they just released is nothing like the old version. Well, at least it has different properties. It certainly seems to be an entirely different tone, but more importantly, the sheen, instead of this incredible gold, is now green. So I'm not really sure why they would name it the same thing, except that they were maybe reacting to the other ink that came out from the other retailers. So, of course, many people who love this ink and thought they were getting an update release, just a new release of it, were really dismayed that the colors and the tones were very different. I would be too. I mean, if you buy something expecting something and it's different, it has the same title, well, they should really let you know in advance with all sorts of copy that it's a homage to or it's different. And frankly, they should have just renamed it. But what happened here? What are these pieces? So people are wondering, was it a mistake? Did they find a bunch of old boxes and wanted to fill it with ink? I know that might sound silly, but, sometimes these things happen. Pelican recently just got rid of all their old materials they had lying around when they were acquired. So companies do odd things when they're being acquired. And I think this is where I have some opinions. Being in the business world during the day, I'm a commercial lender. I see things when banks get acquired, how banks behave, or when companies get acquired during mergers. And I would imagine there's going to be some fallout here for whomever was the product designer for this ink, because you can't make rash decisions when you're under the umbrella of a merger. Uniball, of course, is buying Lamy, and it's Mitsubishi Pencil Company, but they're known more popularly as Uniball because that's their number one product. We all know Uniball. So Uniball Lamy is going to be one company. And from what we've heard about that, they're not going to move the headquarters. They're not going to move the production facilities out of Germany. So Lamy will stay made in Germany, but it will be owned by this umbrella company that's a very large pen conglomerate. And I would imagine that Mitsubishi wants that merger to go through very smooth and without incident or controversy. So there's the rub. Now, there's two things that have happened already. The first is this ink scandal has sort of eclipsed the news of the merger. So what should have had legs by saying Mitsubishi Pencil is acquiring Lamy is now totally wiped out by this ink scandal of what they did with Dark Lilac. So that is not good for this merger. It's certainly not a good sign that things are moving smoothly. I also imagine whomever that product manager is for that ink is in a bit of hot water right now because they caused this, essentially. Whomever managed this wasn't thinking of all the different things that could happen and how these things could be received. And even if they were, even if they had the sign off, now that this controversy has happened and it's taking attention away from the larger Mitsubishi merger, they're the ones that are in the hot seat. And I imagine that it's giving a perception that maybe this isn't the smoothest of transitions. You see what I mean? Now, the whole Lamy purchase by Mitsubishi has its own issues, and it's not really what I think most people are talking about. So most people are upset that you have this company being purchased by this conglomerate, and what does that mean for Lamy? What does it mean for us as fountain pen people? Fountain pens are very small parts of any stationery company. Very small, probably in the single digits of their percentage of sales. We're such a niche community. Hopefully, Lamy will continue. That's what I hope, that we will still see our beloved safaris going forward. And I imagine at this point we will. I don't think there's anything to worry about there. But the thing that concerns me is the language that I don't hear anyone else speaking about. The language that was in the press release about both companies wanting to focus on digital writing. Digital writing. What is digital writing? What does that even mean? That's the part that really scares me, because do you know about the quartz crisis in the early 70s, late 1960s? There was this thing called the quartz crisis that was the invention of quartz movements for watches. I have a hard time saying quartz. Quartz. Anyway, bear with me. So the quartz movement was invented by Seiko, and it was incredibly, as you know, accurate. It's within a fraction of a second per month accurate, whereas mechanical watches are off a second or two a day. So it upended the entire watch industry for years, and legendary heritage brands of watches ended up going out of business and going bankrupt because everyone was buying quartz watches. They were the cool thing. I remember when I was a kid, there was this LED watch that just said the time. It was supposed to be the coolest thing. It's still kind of cool. Anyway, so here's the problem. If you were Rolex and you were chasing the quartz market, you wouldn't be Rolex anymore, and you may have had a crisis of your own and gone out of business. You kind of have to know who you are, what you do. I know there's technology that if you write, it captures even your cursive and translates it into text. Is that digital writing? I don't know. Maybe it's something along those lines. Maybe you forget your email on the side of the pen. I don't know. I don't know what it means, but it means something. So I think there's this return to analog. I think more of us are into mechanical watches. More of us are into typewriters. More of us are into fountain pens, safety razors, these slower processes where we can enjoy the ritual of connecting with ourselves and with others through these items. And often we're sharing them online and talking about our passion and our aspirations in them. And this includes things like cameras and everything else. I mean, analog cameras are getting popular again, and those digital cameras that duplicate that well. So there's this yearning for connection for a world that has passed. I mean, physical books didn't go anywhere, okay? So I just feel like if you concentrate on whatever this digital writing thing is, do you lose your soul, your essence? Do you lose that spark that made you your brand? That's the thing I worry about. And circling back around to this controversy with this ink. This is one ink. One ink. And it's derailed the PR campaign for this merger already, and in a substantial enough way that I'm sitting here on a Saturday morning talking to you about it. So there's also this unlucky coincidence between the merger and this ink scandal in regards to the fact that the merger itself is giving more voice to the scandal, promoting it to more people. There's 2 news alerts for Lamy in the past week, and it's just making it that much more of a controversy and just kind of derailing all their plans. So personally for me, I'm just really disappointed in them. I imagine that people really wanted that original ink, and it'd be so exciting to see an old release come back. Even if I personally don't like purple inks, it's exciting that they can resurrect anything. And if they were to bring it back and it was in its perfect form, I mean, I'd love to see like Mont Blanc bring back the Bohème. Just bring it back. Manufacture it the same way. But Lamy's saying they can't do it, that the formulas have changed, the ingredients have changed over the last couple of years. There's probably truth in that. We all know about supply chain issues that happened during, what happened 4 years ago with big shutdowns and global shipping issues and factories closing and everything else. So it's certainly possible that they didn't have the raw materials to produce this ink again. Fine. Name it something else, Dark bosenberry. Is bosenberry purple? Dark? What's purple? I don't know. I'm trying to think of purple things. The Grinch was purple, right? Yeah, but I guess that's trademarked. But there's other purple things. Just name it something else. And maybe if you want to get the dark lilac boost, then speak about how it has sheen as that old ink did. But I'll tell you what this does make me interested in. Finding that other dark lilac that the quote-unquote European retailers had released a few weeks ago. I'm curious what that was like. Is it just because it had the name that Lamy felt it should compete? Or was it close enough in its properties? That would be really interesting. Because sometimes other ink makers put out inks that are very similar to long lost inks. An example for me is Mont Blanc Bordeaux. I love that ink. I think it's been gone now for 15 years, but I used it all the time. It was my old Oxblood, and you really felt like you were writing with wine. It was brilliant. I've heard that the Birmingham Bordeaux is very, very similar. I don't own it, but it's on its way. I ordered it because I want to see. So this is very similar that if Mont Blanc brought back the Bordeaux, I'd be on it. And if it wasn't the same, I'd be very disappointed. I mean, the most cynical thing is, did Lamy perhaps think that we wouldn't notice? Did they think that? It's possible. Maybe they figured that you already wrote stuff. You wouldn't compare it side by side. I don't know. But companies do things to make money, generally. They don't do things to create scandals. And I love Lamy, and it makes me sad that they're in the midst of this. And I think it doesn't bode well for the merger in regards to PR. I think ultimately everything will be okay, but there's a lot to think about here, and probably more than I've said. I'm sure I'll be thinking about this even more over the weekend, and, there'll be more to say on it. But it's an interesting story. It's odd and rare to see something rise to the national level. But there you go, and there we are. So, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Always a pleasure. I hope to see you again very, very soon further up the road. So take care, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye.